Episode 1, Chasing a Dream. Welcome. So this channel is going to be dedicated to our custom home build, kind of from inception of the idea to chase this dream to hopefully certificate of occupancy. My wife and I are definitely not real estate agents, financial advisors, loan officers, or contractors, so anything we share hopefully can help you in your quest to build a custom home, but everyone's experience might vary a little bit from ours. My wife and I are young adults, and the conversation of course has been had with a lot of people, including all our friends, that when the pandemic hit, housing prices skyrocketed and everybody looked at their own house, their loan to value, what kind of equity they had in it, and thought, holy cow, I could make an absolute killing selling my house right now. Which is probably true for everyone. Of course, the question comes up then, if you sell your house, where do you live? All the houses are expensive, and to top it off, there's really zero inventory out on the market. So if you sell your house and you make a good chunk of change, where are you gonna live? Well, we sold our house and we're kind of living that experiment right now. My wife and I had a really modest little house, and the mortgage was extremely affordable. We had a lot of equity in it. We were set for early home ownership, possibly early retirement. We were in the financially speaking, the Goldilocks zone. We were right where we wanted to be. And then we came up with this dream and decided to chase it. So we sold our house. So I'm walking currently in a drainage ditch, or more locally known as an arroyo. And this is going to play an important part in this first episode, which basically we're going to cover land acquisition and kind of the process we went through to acquire our land that we hope to build on. First and foremost, in my personal opinion, I would preface this idea of building a custom home with it's a full-time job. It's a very difficult thing to do. The only reason I would build a custom home is if there was a piece of land that was exactly where you wanted to build. Otherwise, if you have an interest in a general area like the Northeast Heights, oh, I'd love to live in the Heights, I would suggest just going to find a house in the Heights and buy it. I think the only good reason to build a custom home, or really go through this process, would be to build on an exact piece of land. Well, that's exactly what happened to us. So my brother and his fiance bought a custom house kind of out here in what we like to refer to as Placitas West, which is the west side of Rio Rancho, Bernalillo area. Really beautiful area. Anyway, they purchased a house out here. They're on a cul-de-sac, and they're the only house on the cul-de-sac. Right away, I remember, for over a decade, my brother and I have been talking about having kind of a family compound, or as many of us as we can get on one street. So right away, we go check out his house, and the realization hits that, oh, you know what? We could build our house on this street. And it was that exact thought that put a lot of things into motion. So there you are, you found yourself standing on the perfect plot of land, one that fits everything you ever wanted. What do? Odds are that that piece of land, that particular parcel, is not for sale. So think about all the parcels of land for sale, and think about how many parcels of land there actually are in the country. So odds are it's probably not for sale. So now I got my feet on this dirt and I want to buy this land. What's the next step you do? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there are probably so many ways of figuring out who owns that land. My first thought was to utilize my Onyx application, which is the world's most comprehensive digital mapping system. And Onyx, if you zoom into a plot of land, it'll actually show you who owns that land. So that's what I did, and I came up with a name. Turns out they were actually a married couple. Well, were married, are now currently divorced, and I just Googled them, made a couple cold calls. I remember the first person I called, a guy answered, and I said, "Hi, is so-and-so there?" And he said no, and hung up. And I thought maybe he just wasn't interested in talking to me. So I called back and I said, hey, we disconnected pretty quick. Is so-and-so there? And he said, "I bleeping told you." So anyway, I got chewed out. So the process isn't always easy. The process isn't always easy to find landowners, but in any case, I was lucky enough to come across an actual number for one of the owners, and it happened to be the husband, or oh, didn't expect this. Okay, and I have to find my way out of here. Okay, so anyway, who happens, I'm talking like I'm gonna be able to climb out of this thing while I'm filming and drinking my coffee. So I find the number to the husband, or the ex-husband, and he answers the phone, and I say, "Hey, do you happen to own a parcel of land?" You know, and I give him the general idea of where it's at, and he says, "We do, you know, we bought it like 20 years ago." Says, "I do. We bought it like 20 years ago, and oh my gosh, I think I just fell in a snake hole. Son of a gun." Says, "I do." Back to the story. "We do. We bought it probably 20 years ago. It's undeveloped." And I thought, oh, cool. Well, you're the right guy then. Hang on, guys, I'm trying to negotiate this erosion here. Okay. So I said, "You're the right guy, you know, what are your plans with the land?" He said, "You know, we bought it 20 some years ago. We really don't have any plans for it." And I said, "Oh, really? Okay, well, you know, I have an interest in purchasing it from you." And he said, "You know, my ex-wife and I own it together." And he said, "You know, I can't really speak for her, but I don't really see a reason why she wouldn't have an interest in getting rid of it." So I said, "Perfect. Well, I know it's now a sensitive situation between him and his ex, so I say, you know, would you do some of the groundwork for me and contact her and see if she indeed does have an interest?" And he said, "Sure, I'll do that, and I'll give you a call back." So a couple days go by and I don't hear from him, and I'm really persistent when I want something. So I call him back and he says, "Yeah, I got a chance to talk with her. She's open to selling it, blah, blah, blah." So he gives me her number, and I open communication, start a dialogue with her, and I'm like, "Hey, you know," I go through the whole story again, "You're interested in your land." She says, "Okay." She says, "How would you feel about going halfers on an appraisal?" I'm not really interested in going halfers on an appraisal, okay? But sometimes you gotta give a little to take a little. Half the appraisal ended up being a couple $100. And if that's what it took to kind of develop a rapport with her, then that's what needed to happen. So we paid for half the appraisal. So currently I'm walking up our street. Let's see if I can get the sun out of your face. Regarding my statement earlier about an exact plot of land, you're gonna see why this is important to me. So if I just wanted to live in the general Rio Rancho area, I would have just purchased a house. But coming up on this side of me is my brother's house. Directly in front of me is a cul-de-sac. And then to my left here is our land. We are the proud new owners of just about an acre of dirt. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it on video, but my brother's house is below grade a bit, and across the street is our land, and it actually is above grade. One thing that's super important regarding the acquisition of land is you want to go in with the knowledge of, you know, kind of slopes and grading and drainage, and you kind of want to have an idea of what all that stuff is about. So regarding slope, you know, you might be able to tell our land is at a bit of a slope. Actually, on this side of the valley, most everything slopes into the Rio Grande. It's kind of the general thought, everything slopes to the river. So we have to take that into consideration. It might behoove you to try and pick out a parcel of land that has, you know, that's already relatively level. Dirt's expensive. Gas or diesel for excavators is expensive. Getting people in the seat to operate them is expensive. So the more level your land is, the easier that's going to be. Let's talk a little bit about grading and drainage. So if you are looking at acquiring a piece of land and it has any sort of tiny stream, arroyo, you know, flow path when it rains heavily and it goes through your property, I would absolutely recommend to stay away from that. Part of the problem there is, as the landowner, if you intend on putting a structure such as your future residence on it, you are responsible to make sure that that water drains off of your property the same way it did before your house was built. That can really turn into a headache. Something else you're really going to want to take into consideration when purchasing a plot of land is the utilities, if any, what's available on the land. So, you know, with our purchase of the land, we were really fortunate in that our street already had a primary feeder running underneath it, so we had water, which means we got to avoid the $20,000 well drilling fee. Regarding the conversation we had about water drainage off your property, let's say that you bought the land I'm standing on right now and you were to build a primary residence. If you did so, you would need to make sure that this tiny drainage right here, if you follow it, right now we're less than a foot deep. But if you follow this drainage, you'll notice that it's going to dump off into exactly the drainage pool where I was earlier climbing out of. So you can see how much of a problem that could be. Utilities, that's something else you're going to want to take into consideration when purchasing a piece of land. So what that means is, you know, you're going to need electric, you're going to need water, you're going to need waste disposal or sewage. You also need natural gas, propane, those types of things. So we were fortunate enough that the land we wished to acquire already had a primary feeder in the middle of the street. So we don't have to drill for water, which is, you know, can be up to like a $20,000 expense. So when you're trying to build a house, that's the last thing you want to do. Also, we're fortunate in that there is electrical on the property, so we don't have to worry about that. What we do have to worry about is sewage. which means we'll be installing a septic system. In my area, that runs about $6,000. Your septic company should apply for a permit, and once granted, the permit's $500, and then that comes off the price of the septic system. And in our area, septic system is about $6,000. So we will need to do septic, and we will also need to do propane. So we'll get a 250, 500 gallon propane tank buried right next to our house, and that'll supply us with gas. So we sold our house. We're chasing a dream to build. Was it a good idea or a bad idea? Well, I don't know. Have you ever heard the parable of the Chinese farmer? We really don't know yet. Obviously, our fingers are crossed, and we're hoping that it was a good idea. So far, it's been a difficult thing to do, but we're hoping it's a good idea, and I guess we're all gonna find out together.